It was just another regular Monday, or so it seemed. My name is Alex, a 24-year-old software engineer living in a small apartment in the city's bustling heart. I've always been the kind of person who finds solace in the predictable rhythm of code and the soft hum of my computer. It's a world where I have control, a stark contrast to the chaos of real life. I began the day as I always did, sipping my strong, homemade coffee while my fingers danced across the keyboard, coding away the morning. The sun filtered through my window, casting a warm glow over my little workstation. Despite my love for technology, there's a part of me that yearns for the simplicity of nature. Maybe that's why I kept that small potted plant on my desk, a tiny piece of green amidst the sea of electronic gray. As I worked, I couldn't shake off a strange feeling, a whisper in the back of my mind that something was off. Maybe it was the unusual quietness of the street below, or perhaps the eerie way my plant's leaves trembled without a breeze. I shrugged it off, attributing it to the lack of sleep or maybe too much caffeine. The day progressed ordinarily, filled with virtual meetings, lines of code, and the occasional glance at the news playing in the background. Reports of strange meteorological phenomena had been popping up all over the globe: sudden temperature drops, bizarre auroras, and unexplained disruptions in communication networks. Probably solar flares, I muttered to myself, my rational mind finding the most logical explanation. As evening approached, the city's usual cacophony of sounds began to fade, replaced by a suffocating silence that seemed to descend from nowhere. I stood up, stretching my limbs and walking over to the window, peering out into the dimming cityscape. That's when I saw it, a faint, pulsating light in the distant sky, its colors unnatural and shifting in patterns that felt almost intentional. A knot formed in my stomach, the kind of fear that's primal and deep. It wasn't the fear of losing a job or being late for a meeting. It was the fear of something unknown, something that your every instinct screams is fundamentally wrong. I grabbed my phone, intending to call someone, anyone. But who would believe me? The rational part of my brain scolded the rest for overreacting. It's probably just some new drone or a publicity stunt, I tried to convince myself, my voice barely a whisper in the silent apartment. I couldn't tear my gaze away from the light, and as I watched, it grew larger, closer. The city remained eerily silent, as if it too was holding its breath, waiting for something monumental to happen. My heart raced, pounding against my chest like a frantic drummer, each beat a loud echo in the quiet of my room. The night grew darker, the light grew brighter, and the silence. The silence was deafening. I realized then that this was the calm before the storm, a brief respite before everything I knew could possibly change forever. As I stood there, a lone figure against the backdrop of an indifferent city and a mysterious, foreboding sky, I felt small, vulnerable. The plant on my desk, once a symbol of life and resilience, now seemed just as fragile and uncertain as I was. But amidst the fear, a spark of curiosity flickered. What was this light? Why was it here? And most importantly, what was going to happen when it finally reached us? I didn't know it then, but this was just the beginning, the very start of a journey that would test the limits of my understanding, my courage, and my will to survive. The night was far from over, and the real story, the story of our encounter with the unknown, was just about to unfold. The pulsating light in the sky had now grown into a glaring beacon, casting an otherworldly glow over the city. As I watched, paralyzed by a mix of fear and fascination, the once distant anomaly was now directly above. The city, still unnervingly silent, seemed like a ghost town, abandoned and awaiting its fate. Then, without warning, the world erupted into chaos. A deafening roar shattered the silence as beams of light shot down from the sky, striking the city in a methodical pattern. Each hit was precise, targeted, as if whatever intelligence controlled them had a plan, a purpose. My heart raced, adrenaline pumping through my veins. I wasn't just scared, I was terrified, a deep, visceral terror that gnawed at the very core of my being. I ducked away from the window, shards of glass raining down as a beam struck a nearby building, its structure groaning under the sudden assault. The city I knew, the streets I walked every day, were now a war zone, an alien battlefield where humanity seemed nothing more than an afterthought. Despite the fear, my mind raced, trying to make sense of it all. Why were they here? What did they want? And most importantly, how could we possibly survive this? I was a software engineer, not a soldier. My world was one of logic and code, not violence and destruction. But as the building shook from another impact, I knew I couldn't stay here. I had to move to find safety, or at least a semblance of it. Grabbing my backpack, I threw in my laptop, some water, and a few snacks. The essentials, the things that just hours ago seemed so important, now felt trivial, almost laughable in the face of such a catastrophic event. I took one last look at my apartment, my safe haven in a city of chaos, now just another target in this inexplicable attack. I made my way down the stairs, the building groaning and creaking around me. Every step was a gamble, every floor descended a small victory. As I reached the ground level, the sight that greeted me was one of devastation. The streets were littered with debris, cars abandoned as their owners sought refuge, and the distant screams of the city's inhabitants pierced the night. But amidst the destruction, I saw something that reignited a flicker of hope within me. People were helping each other, strangers uniting in the face of a common enemy. The human spirit, resilient and unbreakable, was shining through the darkness of the invasion. It was then I realized that this wasn't just a fight for survival. It was a fight for our humanity, for everything that made us who we are. I joined a group of survivors, each of us scared but determined. We didn't know if we could make a difference, but we knew we had to try. We moved through the streets, dodging beams of light and falling debris, a band of ordinary people thrust into an extraordinary situation. As we moved, I couldn't help but wonder about the beings that had brought such destruction upon us. What were they like? What drove them to attack us? And was there any chance of understanding them, of communicating and finding a way to coexist? Or was this the end, the final chapter in humanity's story? The night wore on, a blur of fear, determination, and a desperate hope for survival. We helped where we could, saving those trapped under rubble, providing comfort to the injured and the lost. And through it all, I felt a profound connection to these people, my fellow survivors. We were different in so many ways, but tonight we were one. As the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, the attacks seemed to lessen, the beams of light retreating as suddenly as they had appeared. Weary and exhausted, we looked around, taking in the extent of the destruction. It was over, at least for now. The city was wounded, its buildings scarred and its streets broken, but it was still standing, just like us. In the aftermath of the attack, amidst the pain and the loss, there was also a sense of unity, a bond forged in the fire of adversity. We didn't know what the future held, whether the attackers would return or if we had seen the last of them. But one thing was clear: whatever came our way, we would face it together, as a community, as humanity. And me, Alex, just a software engineer in a city under siege, I realized that in the grand scheme of things, we are all just small pieces of a much larger puzzle. But together, those small pieces can form a picture of resilience, of strength, and of hope. The night the sky fell was the longest night of my life, but it was also the night I truly understood the power of human spirit. And as the dawn broke, bringing light to a darkened world, I knew that no matter what, that spirit would endure, always.